What's up, everybody? It's Ulysses Owens Jr., and I'm here with my incredible friend,
Keith Powell.
This is Two Dudes Talking Drums. So today, the topic that we're going to talk about is built for it or born with it. And it's simply a fancy way of saying trained talent versus formal training. Keith and I both have really unique backgrounds. We both grew up in the church, playing drums in the church. Him in Detroit, me in Jacksonville. I had an opportunity to get formal training. Keith had an opportunity to get training, but within a completely different context. And so what we're going to really unpack in this episode is not saying raw talent is not good or that formal training is better. We're going to actually take the time to let y'all know both are great, and here's some ways to incorporate and integrate the advantages that both of them bring. So I'm going to shut up. Keith.
I'm sorry, I was checking
Stop
the sound.
looking at that computer.
I was checking the sound. I was like, he's so far away from the mic. Is he getting picked up?
Sorry. Okay.
No, you good. You good. It was picking you up, but if it gets louder, that's what happens. So, I guess I should start by since you're a teacher, you teach.
Yeah.
You instruct. You travel all over people. And I was although we, like you said, we did start in the same way, both at church. The paths went differently. Mm-hmm. Whereas you ended up getting the training. I ended up learning to play by watching. So me of course talked about it, but I took 2 drum lessons, and I wasn't gonna tell the story, but the guy that taught me claimed that he's passed away now, so I can't double check this. So if you hit the comments, it ain't gonna matter. But he said that he was Kool & the Gang's first drummer. Before they was cool, back when they was rehearsing, he told them they wasn't gonna be nothing, and he dropped out.
Can you tell me, because this is very important, we've had this in a private conversation, how long were those lessons?
My lessons were 30 minutes each. It was one Saturday. It was one Saturday. It was in the summertime, and the way we got it, I was riding down the street and heard him playing drums. I want to learn. He gave us 30-minute lessons, me and another friend of mine, on one Saturday, and the next Saturday we learned another song. So we learned Beat It on one Saturday, and we learned Billie Jean on the other. And I don't know if y'all understand what that means, but beat is boots at, boots at, boots at, boot at, and Billie Jean is boot, at, boot, tap, boot, at, boot, boot at. It's the same.
So he taught y'all the same groove.
Same groove twice. And so yeah, that was it. And I didn't touch another drum set again until I was 15 or 16 years old when I went to church. So I was at church at 14, but I didn't touch, and then decided I wanted to play when I was over 15, almost 16 years old. So I used to carry, my old pastor, he always tells the story, I would have my drumsticks in my back pocket. And be walking into church like I was a drummer. And I was not a drummer yet. I was definitely not a drummer yet.
You were foreshadowing.
I was definitely foreshadowing. But I sat under, the bass player was Fred Hammond. Y'all may know who that is. And the main drummer was Joe Bruce. Both, by this time, Fred wasn't there as much. He was doing the commission thing and more. But Fred was playing for the Clark sisters. So when he wasn't on the road, he was there, and I would be sitting under him. So Joe Bruce was like the drummer that I first knew. And so I learned by trying to mimic him, because he was like, at that moment, that was the baddest drummer I'd ever seen in my life. I hadn't watched any videos. I didn't understand that music had drummers on it. I was like mentally, I knew it had drummers on it, but it was like wanting to know who the drummer wasn't important. It was like, oh, that's a great song. But Joe was like drum god for me. Mm. And so yeah, and people who know how he played, when they hear me play, they're like, yeah, you sound like Joe. Mm. And so that's, anytime somebody say that, that's my like, okay, I'm good. But yeah, man, that's kind of how I got in, coming up in the big city of Detroit, going through. So all of those drummers you're thinking of, yep. The answer is yep. I've seen them, been around them, or sat back and did this, watching them. So that was my training ground. That's where I learned.
I love that. So my training ground, I started playing drums when I was 2 years old. Shout out to Toy Harris, who, rest in peace, was one of the great gospel drummers in Jacksonville. Unbelievable. I also saw John P. Key's drummer. I can't remember what his name was, but I remember specifically they were traveling through Jacksonville, and they played at my uncle's church, Church of God Sanctuary of Praise. And the drummer, they actually changed the entire setup at the church. The drums used to be set up like way in the back. But when John came in, because he had such a big choir, they actually took like over where the communion table was and like
put him right out front.
And they put the drums right out front. And everybody knew how much I love the drums. So they saved me a seat right in front of him. So I got to see him. And then there were a bunch of other drummers that I probably checked out along the way. But I started falling in love with playing drums at church. And then my parents, I think around age 5 when I graduated kindergarten, they bought me a set of bongos. And I remember unwrapping those in my parents' Chrysler's Fifth Avenue and just loving that process of like, oh my God, having the bongos. And then another part of playing drums in church, which I know you know this, Keith, is you don't get to be the main drummer until you earn that. So a lot of times what happens is you can be near the drummer, but they're going to give you a piece of percussion equipment. So I got bongos. My dad, right. My dad he took this piece of 2x4 and they had, a set of cowbells. This is back when like you could buy them as a set, and it was like pitch cowbells. Yes. I don't know how the heck pitch cowbells ended up in our church, but either way, my dad took them because it was like on a crowbar thing, and he bought this 2x4 and he nailed the cowbells to the
drum, the bass drum.
No, to the 2x4.
Okay.
And I would sit next to the drum, and while they was playing, I'd be like I was an accessory.
Right.
And then Toy got mad because they weren't paying enough money. And he said, I'm done with y'all. And so my uncle said, well, Bim Jr. is there. That's my nickname. Why don't we let him play? And then from there, my parents tried to get me lessons, but at that time, people weren't teaching drummers that young. So then I got classical piano lessons. Then by the time probably I was 8 or 9, I started getting drum set lessons. So my journey really is that sort of raw path to formal, but then there's my cousin Kevin Sibley, which you and I both talked about in terms of he was the organist and he was my informal trainer. He was do it again. Oh God. And he, so there was that. So I think what's important to see like how you in Detroit, me in Jacksonville had a very similar experience. But what I want you to kind of pick up on now, Keith, tell us about how, because I feel like though you did not have a formal training experience, what Joe and some of those cats gave you and some other stuff that you laid on me that was so heavy, I think was more formal than even some of the things I had. So like, share some of the training that you did have even in the space that you were in.
Well, it definitely does start with Joe. There was another guy named Damon, who was in the school band in Detroit, Damon Maley. Shout out, what up? He and I, anytime we're around each other, the first thing we do, we laugh, we joke, and then we start looking at each other like, where the drum set at? We got to have a drum off. And he always wins, but I always act like he doesn't. But he was really instrumental in my growth. But one of the things that we talked about it was his granddad was a jazz drummer. And his granddad, when I would play like any drummer, you try to do those licks and rolls on the turns. And I didn't always make it back to the 1. I learned how to make it back to the 2 and make that 2 sound like it was supposed to be. But he knew I was messing up. And so he told me, he said, Keith, put me aside one day, he said, Keith, you can't play it unless you sing it. And that, at first I didn't quite understand it. He started, he started just singing like the toms and the cymbals. And the more he did it in front of me, I mean, I was a beatboxer, I knew that, but I didn't make the connection until he said it. And that made me sit down and start playing and trying to sing licks before I, did it. So that was, some training that, a piece that I got from one person. I used to sit, I'm going to say a name, but I used to sit with, I ain't going to say a name. I sat with a drummer. I'll say the name. Myron Bell and I, sat at a theater. I might have been in somewhere, but he used to travel with us in the play. And, he and I would sit and I would play something and he would play it and he would say, he would do something while he was playing. I said, do that again. And he would show that to me. I said, Mario Skeeter Winans, he would play it. He's, all of us grew up with that one song you already know from,
Now Are We.
Now Are We, yeah. The intro to Now Are We. If you guys don't know the song Now Are We, don't tell me you can play. Dude, he was like a teenager playing that. That was like
16.
Yeah, he was like 16. Yeah, he was a teenager playing that, and I was playing at 16, and I couldn't do that. So, but yeah, I got a chance to sit with those types of cats and pick their brains. There's other cats that this guy named Dave Modoc. He passed away some years ago. Unbelievable drummer, and he said so. There's different people that I sat with that I learned from, get a piece here, get a piece there, get a piece here.
Keith, I want you to go back to something. I remember I was talking a while ago because I just want y'all to know these conversations, like two dudes talking, is really kind of like the final, like it's basically just with cameras, us, like conversations we've already had. But you talked about that deacon, and I want you got to share this with them. You talked about that deacon who told you about singing phrases, and you actually like demonstrated it.
Yeah, he would, like I say, he would, like, I'm trying to figure out, he would do, and I'm like, so I had to sit and listen to him do that, and he would like, sing it, Keith, sing it. So he made me with him, and we would go through, and then I sat on the drums and started going, and I'm like, oh, so if I can sing it, let me try it. And those were the things that, so I can't always come up with that thing that I want to play. But if I listen to a song, learning that song, and if I tune out or just kind of, once I get that melody and I know where this song is going, then I can go, or I can do, and like, okay, I'm gonna go do that. And then get down, because I'm singing it first. It's in my head. I know I can play that. And those were just those things made it where you play things that are unique sometimes. And it also made it where you didn't always play the same thing, but you played something that made people go, oh snap, what was that? And drummers will come up to you, what was that lick you did? And I might not even, a song or three later, I have no clue. But that's learning how to play, and that's transferred over to other things. So when as a producer, I'll sit and so I'm like, I'm gonna go program that, or I'm not gonna program that. I'm gonna sit there and actually play that like Michael Jackson used to do it. That's how he built his stuff. You sing it and then you make it, and those are the things that really, for me as a young drummer coming up, those are the types of things that I think I won't say made me stand out, but I definitely think they added to my sound, which made me unique in that way where somebody's like, oh, that's Keith playing.
I love that. So I want to bring up something that you and I both experienced. Two African-American dudes growing up, you in Detroit, me in Jacksonville. There's a really key element to our playing that people don't realize, particularly in our communities. One is which many of us didn't have drum sets. Many of us own one pair of drumsticks, with thank God for duct tape and gaff tape. It's funny, I did a studio session the other day where they gave me some gaff tape, and I said, oh, now I see what gaff tape is actually supposed to be for.
Because it's not for drums.
It's not for drumsticks.
Electrical tape. It's not for drums.
Electric tape is for wires. It's not for drums.
Duct tape is not for.
And so something that, we had to figure out was like the church for many of us was that place where we not just played, but we got access to the instrument. Now, my parents bought me, my aunt bought me a Biscuitettes, which Keith says he missed that cartoon segment.
I do not know what that is.
But they bought me a little kit when I was 2, then I got another when I was 4, and then by the time I was like 8, I got my first Mapex Sunny Bright kit. But Keith and I have talked about not having access to a kit and figuring out how do you practice, because before this episode is over, we're going to give y'all some tools from both sides. How, as an untrained musician, to be able to get access to some level of training, and as a trained musician, how to still not lose that natural organic flair.
Right.
But Keith, talk a little bit about, like, you told me you didn't have your own drum set.
Yeah, I didn't get my first drum set until I was 30, like in my 30s, like 30, probably somewhere between 30 and 32, 33. And before I actually owned the drum set. Now, yes, I was playing in bands. I had played on the road a little bit and played in different sections, been asked to play. I turned down a lot of gigs I wish I had never turned down, but been asked to play for a lot of people, and I never owned the drum set. I think that was part of the reason why I turned some stuff down, because they would be like, well, bring your drum set. And I'm like, I got the sticks. Y'all better rent one, cause I ain't got one. So I started at 12, took the 2 lessons, didn't touch the drum set again until I was 15. Somewhere around the age of about 20, the guy that gave me the 2 lessons gave me a drum set, but I never put it together or anything. I had it, because at that time I was actually on the road, traveling, acting. So I never got to put together. The drum set got destroyed. That's a whole different story, but it got destroyed. And so I was like 22 then, So now I'm playing at different churches, doing all these different things, traveling, teaching, doing all of this stuff. Still don't have a drum set. And I finally picked up, a guy bought this brand new bad Yamaha drum set that was sick. It was sick. It was green. It was sick. And he was like, yo, man, you can have my drum set. And I was like, what? Yeah, man, give me $300. And I was like, well, let me see it at first. And I go there, bro, and it's a 7-piece pearl, all black. He said, you can take all of the cymbals, you can take everything, you can take the throne. I'm actually sitting on the drum throne now. So I was in my 30s when I got that. And I'm 55 now. I'll be 55 next month. So that's it. And so from there I started, that's the only time I got. So I'll say this, I didn't practice officially like everybody else. I played on my legs.
Tell me about that. I give you a song, Jesus is real.
Jesus is real.
How do you go home without a drum set and practice and be able to apply what you practice on the drum, like the church?
I want to give a little shout out to someone who will never hear it, at least not right away. And that's Dennis Chambers. Dennis Chambers said how he practiced on pillows. And so I would practice, like, you guys probably can't see me now, but, Jesus is real. I would practice like that on my legs. And then if I had my sticks, because eventually I broke them little 7/8. And once I got me some sticks, I would sit and do the same thing on my legs, like, hitting my knees. And that hurt. Because I had to remember not to hit hard, but you would think that would be the easy thing to remember. But yeah, I would practice like this, and then I would come to church on that Saturday for the rehearsal, and that, in many instances, would be the first time I've actually applied it to the drums. So that goes back to learning how to sing the part, because so I'm doing that. And mimicking it with my, you know what I mean? And then when I get to the church and it's time to play it, sometimes I walk in on the Sunday and they like, we're going to play this song. And they gave me the song that the day before, and I haven't played with the choir. The same thing. So I got to come 1, 2, shot, 2, stack this big, and lock in. And, that was my training for years. So you got to think from 16 to 30, 31. Every now and again, it was very rare that I could get in the church to practice. Because you say that's where we had access to the instrument. Right. So as coming from the raw side, that was what you do what you got to do if that's what you want to do.
No, I love that. And I'll talk about kind of raw side transitioning to training. So my cousin and I, we played at church. Like, I was part of the youth choir. Toy left when I was maybe like 7 or 8. So I took over at the church. And then I remember by 8, I met John Guerin, who, shout out to John, is still teaching. I met him, and John started teaching me on the kit. He introduced me to drum rudiments. So for those that are like, hey, y'all talked about the raw experience, that's my experience. For those that feel that, how do I transition? First, drum rudiments, 28 essential rudiments. Vic Firth even has the poster. You could go on Google, 28 essential rudiments. Vic Firth has it. Shout out to Drumeo. Drumeo even, I think, has a course where you can go through the rudiments. The other thing I want everybody to know, which is very important, is how you hold the sticks. There's 2 different grips. There's match grip, which is this, and there's two kinds of match grip, which is French grip, which a lot of timpanists play with, and then there's German grip, which a lot of classical snare drum players play that way. Then there's traditional grip, which you turn the left hand, or if you're a left-handed drummer, this way, and that is, a lot of jazz players use that technique. But you want to make sure those hands are nice and open. You want to also use the wrist. You don't want to use forearm. You really don't want to put a lot of stress and energy here. You want to have good posture. So when you're sitting at the kit, you don't want to be like this. You want to be sitting up. So those are just some things that my teacher really helped me with. John also introduced me to reading music. He introduced me, for folks that need to know, music has 3 different elements: rhythm, melody, and harmony. Drummers, we live in the rhythm space. So John taught me how to read rhythmic music. Then when I got into middle school, I had an incredible band director, Gail Henley, who's still alive, and she taught me about percussion instruments. Percussion, yes, drum set is a part of percussion, the percussion family, but the percussion family includes everything from timbales to congas to snare drum toms, concert toms. It's endless. And so I needed a classical teacher. So I went to Kevin Gary, who was the principal percussionist at the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra, and he made me have 3 points of study. Snare drum study, where we dealt with rudiments and classical snare drum etude, Cerrone, Delacruz, Pratt, all those guys. Then we dealt with timpani study. Then we dealt with mallet study. And that helped me with middle school and high school band. So and then when I got into high school, I got into jazz band. Then I had a teacher for that. So I want you all to know that there are a lot of different pathways, but the most important thing is to also be able to listen to music. And that's something that Keith and I talk a lot about. So that's kind of the formal route, depending on if you're in a school where you're in band programs, and then you connect getting teachers for every facet of that. And then one thing too, I'll say, and then I'll be quiet. I'm a college professor, which means I sit on audition committees, which also means I get a lot of students that hit me up a month before the audition, and they're like, "Hey, can I get a lesson? Can I, and how am I going to get accepted?" And my first question I ask them is, "Who have you been studying with?" And many of them say, "I haven't been studying with anybody." And I say, that's going to be very difficult for you to get in, because if you did not establish a relationship with a teacher, who's going to monitor and tell you how to get better? It's the same thing like if you only go, God forbid, to a doctor when you're at the emergency room and you've never gone to a doctor, then how are they going to help you? So I want you to understand that if that is your desire to get better, create some kind of a formal relationship with a drum teacher or series of teachers to focus on what goals you have.
I think that me coming up the same way, even though I didn't have the formal teaching, people like Joe, people like Damon, they kept me in line. Don't do that again. Do it like this, sit up, stop using your arm. Those are the things that they said that, we talked about this, where you have to be teachable. And if I want to get better, I'm looking at somebody that's better than me, even though I'm not in school, I'm going, okay, sit up, learn how to hold these sticks proper, learn, it's funny because I'm remembering when I first started, I learned, traditional grip.
Really?
That's the way I learned was traditional grip. And so when I started doing all my learning, the only rudiment I knew was double stroke. So I would do double stroke and I would go into single, but single didn't feel right. So I'd always lay on the double very, very heavy. And double gets me out, to this day, double gets me out of trouble. Anytime I'm in trouble, double stroke roll will save my life.
Double trouble.
But yeah, I can get out of trouble. But it's funny, when I was playing a lot more and I was playing jazz, I would never play even grip, match grip. I would always switch to that grip because that was the way I could do it. I could get into the licks and things like that. And to this day, there's certain times while playing, even if I'm playing a regular funk song, I might in the middle of something switch so I can do something and then switch right back. Because that was that first thing. That was that first, my first truth on drums. So I'm a firm believer in that learn everything. And I think that's the thing about church. Church gave us I didn't know I could play Latin until I was playing Latin. I didn't know it was Latin.
Yeah.
It was just playing drums. We're going to do that groove. That's a cool groove. Let's learn that groove. Now I'm playing Latin. Then I'm playing jazz. Well, there was a song at church that we had to play to kind of have a jazz feel. So let's do this. So I'm like, oh yeah, I know I'm going to switch my grip and play like this because that's where I learned, even though I was playing 4/4 time, regular funk. I just did, you don't do that. And so I learned at church the jazz, the funk, the pop, the rock. I learned those different genres without even realizing. Odd time. The first time I played odd time was at church, and I don't even know why we were doing it. Because it's not like there's a church odd time song.
Ain't no hell.
But what's this? Take Five. When I first heard Take Five, I was going out my mind, and I'm like, I gotta learn that. I didn't realize it was jazz. I didn't realize it was different. It was learn that groove, and I learned it, and that opened me up to all these other odd times. And that's where it goes back to listening, watching videos. Yeah. Is one way, Dave Weckl showed me how to count the odd times.
Yes. He showed me too.
And once I understood that, I was like, I'm dangerous now.
So it's funny because I have two things. So you brought up Dave Weckl. So my cousin Kevin and I, literally Kevin would go take me to McDonald's. He was in college when I was like middle school, and he would come to my house. We set up the drums and we would watch Dave Weckl Back to Basics.
And there was a second one. There was another one.
There's
Next Step.
Plan, next step. Yeah. And so we watched that, and I learned how to play in 7 by watching that as well. But I want to talk about another thing. So you mentioned Beat It and Billie Jean, and I think it was Beat It. Is that the one where they were like drawing a knife on each other?
Yeah, that's Beat It.
So the knife being drawn, I want to dig into this. Why is the knife drawn between raw talent players and formal instruction players to the point where we're attacking each other? And I, I'm in these academic spaces. I've literally had to lobby for students well, I'll just say that because I don't want to violate anything crazy, but I'll just say I've had to lobby for students that come from the natural raw experience. And I've been able to be like, hey, I know they don't have this. One of the things my boss says to me all the time, Dr. Aaron Flagg, he says, they got to make it feel good. If they can make it feel good, if they get to this school, we'll teach them everything else. But what is this tension on your side? Because I know on our side, it's like we kind of feel like people feel like they're not good enough, or that the church experience or the indigenous experience, drum circles or whatever it is, it's not good enough. When the reality is those experiences musically are actually anchored in real people loving the music. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Here's what I think. First of all, there is nobody born trained.
Woo!
You got trained because you had raw talent. Now you can teach somebody. I taught drums for a while. I had a drum school, and I taught drum. And one thing, I had 20-something students. I couldn't stand 19 of them. Now I don't say that to mean that they were mean or something like that, because these were kids.
You're going to have a class action on all students.
No, what you got to. I just got fired.
They're like, Keith Powell. I thought I was a good student.
No, but watch this. I eventually settled on one student. And the reason is, it wasn't the problem of the students and I say that as a joke, but the reason I didn't like teaching them is because most of them had watched Drumline. And their parents were like, you can go do that. And like, I heard you beat on my pots and I know you can play. But there was only one guy that had the raw talent. And when I saw his raw talent, I said, come here. I need to talk. I need you. The rest of y'all, I'm going to teach y'all, but I'm going to teach you. Because he had the it. And to this day, that was in 2002. He's the only one that's playing now. And he's a monster. Shout out TJ. He's a monster. And so I'm just saying, what I think that's the part of the problem is, once people get trained, and I'm going to say this from just, I love y'all, all y'all, but I'm going to say this. Once people get trained, there's a bit of arrogance that kicks in sometimes.
Preach.
And that arrogance causes you to look down your pious nose at the guy that's not trained. Now, the guy that's not trained might not know what you did, but he can play what you did.
So I want to speak to that. Here's what I'll tell you. It's not about, for me, it's never been about arrogance. It's never been about arrogance. What it has been about is, once you get trained, you now are aware of so many options, which is really why we wanted to have this episode. Right. This episode was not meant to pit one against the other. But it was actually, I think this is the first time I've been able to sit with somebody who could really talk about their raw experience, and I could talk about my raw experience into training. Because it's all about how do we integrate all those different things. Because even some of my Juilliard professors, they come to the jazz concerts and they love the improvisational element. We go to some of their concerts. So I think the goal is, how do we come together and get everything? So with that said,
it's really about just recognizing and appreciating.
Yes.
You would say that you could get better.
Yes.
I would say that I could get better.
Yes.
That means we're neither one of us are where we want to be.
Never.
Then why can't we just appreciate what we are? Just appreciate where we are.
There it is, y'all.
It's not that you're better. It's not that I'm better. It's not that I'm worse. We're just going to appreciate where we are.
Yes.
We're going to make music.
And with that music, we're going to become disciplined and consistent. So with that said, y'all, this was trained
versus
we about to do that. Trained. I don't even remember. It's trained musicians versus musicians that didn't get a chance to train, and we all come together and hold hands.
Yep, there you go. So, kumbaya.
Kumbaya.
All right,
so we
y'all.
two dudes
talking drums. Peace. Listen, give us a shout out. Go down to the comment section. Make sure that you give us a thumbs up. Make sure that you ding the bell so that you get the next video when it comes forward. And as always, man, just keep playing, man. Get them rudiments going. All right. We'll catch y'all again. Peace.
See you.